And now it's time to bring in our U.S. Report regular, former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor at Bondi Partners, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, thanks so much for coming on the program again tonight. All sorts of fascinating things happening with the Hunter Biden investigation, which, of course, is still rolling on. And this week, I saw there was a fairly interesting gambit from Team Biden. They actually offered to testify to Congress, but only in public, so that they said Republicans couldn't twist around what he says. What's your thoughts on this strategy here? I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, this is fascinating, James. And if you and I ever get subpoenaed to go to Congress, we should do exactly what Hunter Biden has just done. And this is why. The private meetings, right, the private deposition would be performed in private by a professional lawyer. There's no time limits. It's an ordinary deposition, right, done by professionals. The stuff that's done on camera at the congressional hearings is very much different. It's done by amateurs. The head of the Republicans in the House Oversight Committee is a farmer, not a prosecuting attorney, and they're time limited. You can only ask about 5 minutes worth of questions, and the folks who are giving answers are allowed to delay, and they often do. So this is actually a very smart move by Hunter Biden. And because of this, now you know why the Republicans are pushing back and saying, no, no, no. We are going to have this private interrogation first, this private deposition, before we then do something in public, because they need the professionals to do this and not members of Congress.
And I mean, to dive down a little more deeply into this strategy, is the Biden thought here that maybe the Republicans on Capitol Hill who do this in public in front of the cameras, they start playing for the cameras and go a bit too far, and then plays into the, oh, poor Hunter is just a victim sort of narrative, because as we know, playing the victim right now seems to be your guaranteed route to victory in the press.
Sure. If you see a public hearing at a congressional sort of committee level, every single answer that Hunter Biden gives is going to be tied in some way, say, to his former drug addiction, right? He's going to play that. He's going to have 5 or 6 talking points that he will use on every single answer. It's not a real interrogation. If you had a special committee made up like we did under the Benghazi investigation, where it was staffed by members of Congress who were really lawyers in the real world, that's a different story. But this is an ordinary congressional hearing. So, no, it is pretty much a show trial when you finally get to those public hearings. And that's why the Republicans are so desperate to have a real deposition done behind closed doors with lawyers on both sides. Hunter Biden would have his professional lawyers as well. But that's where the real information would come out.
So can Congress essentially compel them to do that, to go down that road? And if they do, does then the narrative become, oh, look, they're afraid to do this in public because they're a bunch of big, mean Republican bullies?
Yeah, that's sort of the quandary the Republicans face right now, which is that, yes, they could try to enforce the subpoena and to refer Hunter Biden to the Department of Justice for not abiding by the subpoena. And that's how the system would work. But who runs the Department of Justice right now? Hunter Biden's dad. So it'd be very unlikely that the Democrat Department of Justice would enforce a subpoena issued by the House Republican Oversight Committee. This is the same thing that we faced, James, back a decade ago when we tried to get the Attorney General to show up to talk about various things that the Department of Justice was doing. The Department of Justice, he didn't abide by our subpoena at the time, and it was his actual agency that refused to enforce the subpoena against himself. So you do get that situation here when you've got one party in control of the House and another party in control of the White House.
Well, it's all pretty messy, Mick, but it really is sort of a case of subpoenas at 10 paces here, because, you know, we had Special Counsel Jack Smith's comprehensive search warrant for information released this week related to President Donald Trump's Twitter account. Now, this I thought was amazing, and I don't know if this is just simply normal procedure, but they sought his search history, his drafted tweets, his blocks and disputes, but also what I found fascinating, everybody who followed him, everybody he followed, and they wanted a list of everybody who ever retweeted, essentially, anything from the former president's Twitter account, almost like they were trying to kind of create some sort of social media profile of MAGA Twitter, MAGA America. What was your reaction? Because a lot of people on Twitter said this looks kind of sinister.
It does look kind of sinister. And my guess is, and it's just a guess, that your instinct is correct. This is just the ordinary course of business, that whenever they find somebody who has a Twitter account that is relevant to their investigation, they ask for all these things. I don't think there's any way that any court is going to enforce this, because face it, you and I may have retweeted something that the president said over the course of the last 7 years. Are they going to come after us? I don't think so. So my guess is this is just sloppy lawyering on their part. Is there something specific they're looking for? That's the one thing I ask about. Is that, look, they make it look like they're casting this wide net, but maybe there's really only 2 or 3 people that they're interested in following or finding out about, and they don't want to tip it off to the Trump defense team that they're looking specifically, say, for you or for me. So that might be why they're using this general language. I don't think it will hold up, and sooner or later we will know really what the Department of Justice is looking for.
Does this then, though, the narrative around this play into the Trump hand that the Justice Department is going too far, and that, again, he is the one who is protecting ordinary Americans from this Justice Department and big tech deep state that wants to basically criminalize retweeting Donald Trump's tweets, which, even if you don't like his politics, some of them were damn funny.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you're asking yourself, if your question implies whether or not Donald Trump is a better politician than Jack Smith, the answer is yes. The Department of Justice has made a bunch of mistakes along the way. They have given plenty of evidence to sort of back up the narrative that Trump wants, which is that he's a victim, that this is a weaponization of government coming after their political enemies. They have given plenty of fuel to that fire, and this is not just the first example. Going back to the very first raid on Mar-a-Lago, which is what now? More than a year ago, you and I talked about that. This just looked bad. The Department of Justice is losing the political battle here. It's one of the reasons you've seen Donald Trump skyrocket in the Republican primaries, as he's managed to turn what you might ordinarily think would be a negative into a political positive. He's a better politician than the folks at the Department of Justice. That should surprise nobody.
And finally, I just want to go to the sad news of Rosalind Carter, Jimmy Carter's wife's funeral this past week gone by. Joe Biden was joined there on Air Force One going to the event by Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Bill Clinton on Air Force One. Interestingly, though, Barack Obama, I think he stayed behind in Washington. Was he left behind just to sort of run the show while everybody was off at the funeral?
Yeah, the speculation here in Washington, D.C., and I imagine it's made its way across the Pacific, is that this is part of the scheme to sort of promote Michelle Obama as the potential replacement for Joe Biden in the 2024 election. Here's what I can say about that. I don't know the Obamas. I've only met President Obama twice, which is saying something, by the way, as to how aloof he was, but that's another story for another day. All the Democrats I know who do know the Obamas and know them well say that she has absolutely zero interest in doing this. They feel like they have done their public service. They are fabulously, fabulously wealthy right now, and they have their privacy, and there's very little interest. There's zero interest on the part of Michelle Obama into coming and running in 2024. So I'm not sure why Barack was not there, but I'm pretty sure this doesn't have anything to do with Michelle Obama replacing Joe Biden on the Democrat ticket in 2024.
Well, Mick Mulvaney, that's a relief. Thank you so much for joining us again on the U.S. Report.